So, she's going to be reading. We're going to move over to the political part of the evening here, because it's a political evening. And Nina's going to read from her newest book, Golden Handcuffs.
Actually, this is the first edition.
This is the first. Oh,
It's got retitled. I'll tell
are you going to?
you.
She's
About
going
Trump's women.
Secret History of Donald Trump's Women. Nina Burleigh. Stole her beer. I got her to come up here, and then I drank her beer.
But here's one right here.
Well, that's mine. You can have it.
All right, well, thank you so much for that introduction. So before I get into it, I just want to say how I got onto this. That as he said, I've been a journalist for many years. I cover politics off and on, jump in and out. And I was covering Trump from New York in 2016, and was in Hilton the night that he got elected. I had thought that he wasn't going to be, I'm from the Midwest, so I understood that he could get elected, but after the Billy Bush tapes, I thought not going to happen. And then it did. And I was there at 3 in the morning. Sorry, is that better? I was in the Hilton at 3 in the morning, and the MAGA hats were out, and all of a sudden this roar. I had put myself right at the bottom of the stage because I wanted to, and it was like a Hieronymus Bosch painting. Like there was Bannon next to me, and Giuliani was here. It was incredible, and I stood at the bottom of the stage because I thought he's going to come down and I'll be able to see right at them. And this roar, the crowd started to roar. And there was nobody on the stage. I'm like, where is it? This is the Hilton. I don't know how many people have been there on 6th Avenue, but there's a balcony at the top, and he had started in the balcony, and he was doing this like strut around the balcony near the ceiling, trailed by these 6 gazelles in, their high heels and their ice skater dresses, and then they came down. And they came down the stairs, and I was eye level with their feet. And they wear these 6-inch stilettos, and I thought, it was just amazing, like the rigor that it takes. Any woman here knows, like if you're wearing those shoes, that if you're not looking down when you go down the stairs, you really have had a lot of training. So that was the sort of impetus for, I wrote a kind of a snarky cover story for Newsweek, called The Queens of Trumplandia, right after that. And my agent took it over to editors at Sunday & Schuster, and they were like, hey, write a book about them. And I did. So that's what you're going to hear. Now, can you hear me okay if I put it like this? Where do you want me to put this? I don't, closer. All right, so the first little piece I'm going to read this is all from the prologue. And the book is no longer called Golden Handcuffs, The Secret History of Trump's Women, which I thought was a pretty funny title. It wasn't my title, but it's now called The Trump Women, Part of the Deal. And you can buy it on Amazon. Kindle or paper. So I'm going to read from the prologue. And the first part of it is just 2 pages, and it's an interaction that I had with one of the women who were connected to the circle. The inner circle was hard to get to. So, this is the prologue, Golden Handcuffs. A spring day in Manhattan, a small table covered with white linen inside a chic lot filled with women who throw on Dior and Louboutin and stroll over from Upper East Side Iries the way other women throw on jeans and sneakers for a trip to the Starbucks drive-thru. Anyone can walk in, but not everyone can walk in unannounced and get a table. The maitre d' and his waiters, all men, all with vaguely Mediterranean accents, French, Italian, possess a diamond district appraiser's eye for who really belongs. A nanosecond of a glance at a shoe or the warp and weft of a jacket determines whether and where a patron sits. A stunning woman is seated across the table from me. People stare when she walks in. She grew up like this, glorious, dizzying in her beauty, impossible to hide. One of the global billionaires plucked her out of a beauty pageant, as they do. Prince Charming was married and whisked her far away. Extreme hijinks ensued, up to and including drug abuse, hundreds of thousands of dollars blown on trashed hotel rooms, secret trips to hospitals, reluctant or forced participation in creative kink. She escaped, and thanks to his money and her looks, resides among a slice of New York society where other leggy beauties attached to other men with big money live in the same few zip codes, shop at the same designer stores on 57th Street, party with bold-faced names, and grab casual lunches at exclusive high-dollar restaurants the way Seinfeld and friends hung out at Monk's Cafe. On the table in front of the woman is a pen and a piece of paper. We're here to talk about the queens of Trumplandia, some of whom she knows. But she won't actually talk. There are too many ears within earshot. The entire conversation will take place on pieces of paper, like a communication between prisoners. On the paper, she will scrawl the first initials of some of them. M-I-J-T. She will draw maps and arrows and scribble down words. And after she writes something down and I indicate I understand, she will scribble it out. She'll crumple up all the paper before we leave and take it out with her. The food will be delivered and left untouched. At one point, she will spy a Trump Organization lackey, a man she knows well, and will draw an arrow on the paper in his general direction. I'm not supposed to turn around and look. The stories she weaves about Trump's wives and daughters aren't even that salacious. They hint at embarrassing secrets, private conflicts, but what she really wants to share is her own story. It is, it turns out, a common one among the great beauties in the realm she inhabits. It involves a kind of long-term enslavement that would, in a different social set, lead to, at the very least, a restraining order. But it will not because of money and fear. The rich are different from you and me, Fitzgerald wrote in the 1920s. A century before the Jazz Age chronicler scribbled that line, French writer Honoré de Balzac had a different way of putting it. Wealth has great privileges, he observed, and the most enviable of them all is the power of carrying out thoughts and feelings to the uttermost, of quickening sensibility by fulfilling its myriad caprices. If the rich are different from you and me, then Donald Trump is even more different from the average rich person. His emotional life has been described as a series of transactions, and his passion is more stirred by urges for revenge and approval than love. He has had many toys, but never seemed to take personal satisfaction in his boats and private planes and palatial dwellings. Like the women, the things serve as set pieces for business. To fit in, the queens of Trumplandia live in a world of mirrors, literally and figuratively. They can't step outside without a rigorous inspecting in the glass. Those images are then fed back to them daily by paparazzi and all the other cameras always aimed at them, and all that is uploaded onto the internet. They dangle in the moving prism of this disco light and the shiny marble halls and floors reflecting their images back at them, smaller and smaller and smaller into infinity. Mirrors, cameras, stylists, schooled at fashion magazines and catalogs help turn them into ideals of magazine and Times Square advertising. As Trump brand extensions, nothing they do or say reflects anything that civilians consider real. They possess some of the most photographed female faces in the world. They are expected to pose. They all share in common the instinct of putting one foot forward, toe pointed just slightly out, the first position of Sears catalog modeling. They're masters of the still face. Like Trump, who watches his face on TV with the sound down, They have studied and selected a small range of expressions to be deployed in public. Their very faces are on-brand message. For a generation, they have belonged to America's tabloid wallpaper. The tabloid lexicon exists for them. Their diamond rings are dazzling. The ensembles are sizzling. They belong to the ranks of the spangly, sequin, boob job, nose fixed, mascara smeared, and easily satirized C-list females, famous for being famous, a celebrity backdrop that one could, and many did, ignore. Others did not ignore them at all. On the contrary, they were transfixed by the aspirational hallucination of Trump and his real-life menagerie of females. Ivana, the nouveau riche's capitalist version of Tammy Faye Baker. They were weeping sisters on the same stage at the same time. Marla, the wedding cake bride, frozen forever in time, holding the knife over the fabulous cake in her confection of a dress, minutes before it all melted back to mom jeans and Mall of America reality. Little Ivanka, the Caroline Kennedy of Kardashians, famous for her father's brand, educated at the best schools, born to trademark and to pose. And finally, Melania, the cipher goddess of the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition, a woman who looks like she lives inside an ad for Lexus or BMW, an ad in which car and woman are parked together, symbiotic, before a mansion with elongated driveway and palms. Lights, camera, brand. Their names are on jewelry, creams, hotel spas, on the shopping channel and Lifetime television, and on lines of affordable clothes and shoes made in China, sometimes knocked off the Italian originals. Get the look, they said on TV and on the internet, and many women tried and are still trying. On QVC, the home shopping channel nascent in the 90s, you could sit on the couch at home and buy a House of Ivanka peekaboo faux silk blouse for $79.99. A romantic look, Ivana told you, sitting in her own chair on camera for 4 or 5 hours a day, a couple of weeks a month. On good days, Ivana's personal enrichment telethons raked in $200,000 an hour. A generation later, one could go online and find the Ivanka Trump collection, the daughter's version of mom's home shopping brand. For a while before the campaign, one could still browse MelaniaTrump.com and order bracelets and necklaces dripping with affordable gems that the New York Times style mavens called Louis XIV via Atlantic City. The website stated that the Melania Trump Caviar Complex C6 skin cream was created through intense collaboration with Melania's research laboratory. There, according to the website, it was, quote, discovered that the secret to anti-aging can be explained in 3 distinct parts. This is known as the aging pyramid, unquote. The aging pyramid had 3 sides. Quote, loss of nutrients, extrinsic stress, lack of receptivity, unquote. The skincare deal fell through, but the Melania brand and presumably her research laboratory can be up and running again and has years of life ahead, juiced and replenished as it will be by her first lady years. Of course, this is now we're beyond that. Everything about the family was for sale. Even the $10,800 gold bangle Ivanka wore on 60 Minutes after her father's election. And if not that, other looks she'd worn as a political factotum for Dad, including the Ivanka Trump pointed toe Black Athena pump for $89 and the embellished mock neck sheath dress for $138. The brands all have a price tag hanging off them. The little tags add up to pin money for the Trump women. They don't live on the money. According to, I'm not going to go into the Kushner's finances. Obviously, the finances do not include the pin money. If you really want to get the look and you have an extra $50,000 lying around and the time on your hands for discreet convalescing, you can go to one of the plastic surgeons in New York or Dallas or Palm Beach who specialize in the Ivanka nose or the Melania face. I don't know if they're still doing it. We know so much about them, the queens of Trumpland. As a clan, they entered our consciousness during an era when newspapers still mattered and employed gossip columnists who were so powerful that powerful people would call them up personally and tip them off to what they were going to do next to this or that spouse. In the dusty boxes of the libraries of New York tabloids, clippings about the divorces and all things Donald deemed too frivolous to digitize are filed away and yellowed. Hundreds of snippets packed into yellow envelopes labeled Ivana 1988-89 and Divorce crumble when unfolded. There the Trumps are with Michael Jackson. There is Ivana before her ethereal beauty faded. There is Marla's father on a publicity junket to New York to open up to Liz Smith. And then there's Marla in her wedding dress. We know so much about them. There is so much arcana, so much we've forgotten and are forgetting because we consumed them the way we consume thumbed-over magazines in the mani-pedi chair. But the Trump Queen's interviews and writings and exercise videos and other broadcast ephemera are still available online, on eBay, on blogs, and in their autobiographies, in biographies authorized and unauthorized, on television, fixed for electronic age, eternity, on YouTube. And yet, we don't really know much about them at all. It's impossible among the mirrored walls of tabloid coverage, the publicists and lawyers, their own airbrushed versions of their lives, to know what is true and what is not. They are a family of secrets, secrets maintained with non-disclosure agreements and litigious attention from lawyers on retainer who slap restraining orders on wives, exes, and employees, and who threaten journalists and photographers. Trump is famous for muzzling everyone around him with NDAs. One legend passed around in New York is that former Trump Organization employees, bound by their NDAs into silence, formed a support group where they could talk about what happened to them. The lawyers pulled the NDAs out of safes and shoved them at ex-employees. They waived prenups at the exes. They dragged journalists into court. They tried to do that to me. The lawyers are there to menace professional investigators, other lawyers, government regulators, and journalists, like guard dogs snarling at the perimeter of the manicured lawns of their clients' lives. There are at least two stories about how Trump met each of his wives, one told by him and his entourage, and a different one told by the Czech police or the Slovenians or Marla herself. Both versions are equally valid. Truth flickers in halls of mirrors and is malleable with alternative facts. Perception is more important than reality, a lesson Ivanka learned at Daddy's knee and shared in her first book. Because of that primary rule, Trump women who know or have known Donald, also live in states of fear in inverse relation to their power and wealth. Even the most powerful and wealthiest are not living entirely without fear. Their world is always circumscribed by the threat of repression, a cutoff of funds, and emotional, if not literal, blackmail. I'm almost done. Trump lives with a peculiar fear of his own, and this is relevant for tonight. Quote, "Women have one of the great acts of all time. The smart ones act very feminine and needy, but inside they're real killers," he wrote in Trump, The Art of the Comeback. The person who came up with the expression, the weaker sex, was either very naive or had to be kidding. I have seen women manipulate men with just a twitch of the eye, or perhaps another body part, unquote. A germaphobe, Trump is horrified by female bodily functions, especially menstruation and childbirth. Pregnancy is okay, it makes breasts grow. Breastfeeding famously disgusts him. Postpartum women, aka mothers, disgust him. Divorcing his first wife, he told a journalist he didn't like sex with mothers. He said, "I don't want to sleep with a woman who has had children," New York Post writer Liz Smith recalled. Like the Hebrew ascetics who wrote the Bible, and the African shamans who banned menstruating women from villages, like his father, he is infected with the ancient patriarchal belief that women's natural functions are taboo. And for Trump, the trouble with modern women is you can never know when these female killers have blood coming out of their wherever, which is what he said about famously, Megyn Kelly, who's now a big fan of his again.